The official dates released by INEC earlier this month, February 20th for presidential and National Assembly elections, March 6th for governorship and state assembly polls, have sparked debates over voter inclusivity, religious overlaps, and the resolution of election litigations. Now, joining us to unpack these matters is Dengiyefa Angalapu, a research analyst with the Center for Democracy and Development. He's a political scientist with expertise in democracy, human rights, conflict and security issues, including terrorism, oil-related violence and maritime security. He will help us analyze whether the current timeline ensures fairness and stability, and what the ongoing discussions in the National Assembly and civil society could mean for Nigeria's electoral process. Stay with us as we explore the key matters arising from the 2027 election schedule and what it could mean for voters across the country. Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, to start off with, can you give us, an overview of the 2027 election timeline that has been released by INEC and why it has become such a contentious issue? When you go on social media, Nigerians are talking about it. People are talking about it, bringing, a whole lot of back and forth within Nigerians concerning this. What is your overview?
So first off, the release of the timeline kickstarts the electoral process. So Nigerians know that with the timeline that has been released, political parties, civil society organizations, and all interested parties know that we are now in the time of elections. So it's very, very important. Again, it spells out the various schedules, including the conduct of party primaries and all that. So it is what everyone has been looking for and has been waiting to see to prepare against the elections in 2027. But this is why it's very important. But INEC has a stipulated regulation as part of the Electoral Act to say they have to release a timeline, not less than 360 days before the conduct of the presidential or general elections. So this is what they have done. And of course, I definitely understand that we'll get to some of the controversies and why people are, debating about the timelines.
Now, looking at this timeline, and as she made mention, there's been a lot of back and forth when it comes to the timeline. What are the key legal provisions under the Electoral Act 2022 that INEC says justify the current dates? We know that there isn't a specific, should I say, mandated dates for these elections, and we know that INEC has the responsibility of picking out those dates. And as you said, it is stipulated that at least 360 days before the election. Now, with the clash that we're having with the Ramadan period, which is the holy month of fasting for the Muslims, and the Lenten period season for the Christians, how do you think that this would be taking when it comes to voting, when it comes to voter turnout, as well as the officials that are supposed to conduct the election?
So very important question. So really, if you look at the timeline, there's another very important provision. And that provision is that, and it's stated in our constitution, that elections must be conducted between 150 to 30 days before the expiration of every office. So whether the office of the governor, the president, it must be conducted within that window. So anything less than 30 days, it becomes very problematic. So I believe INEC must have planned within this schedule. However, when it comes to the debate about religion, Ramadan and all that, the Lenten season and all of that, there are 4 key issues that we need to consider. One is a question on whether or not it is permitted in a democracy for this kind of agitations to come up. 2 is the legal status of these agitations. 3 is the broader implications of this agitation. Then 4, where are the agitations truly coming from? From the common people or few elites? When it comes to number 1, you will realize that wherever democracy lands, wherever it's introduced, it mixes up with culture. It mixes up with religion, and it mixes up with ethnicity. That is why no democracy in any part of the world is the same. There are different variants. So that's why we have the Nigerian democracy different from the Ghanaian democracy. So it's different because you must have made religious consideration, you must have made ethnic consideration, you must have made cultural consideration. After all, democracy is about the people, and people have distinct cultures. So these kind of agitations are permitted within a democracy. And in fact, if it doesn't come this way, it will be very, very surprising because people want to push their agendas and, and their specific concerns in a democracy. So it is permitted, and democracy, basically anticipates this kind of agitations and, interest. However, is there a legal backing to say you can't conduct elections in Ramadan or the Lenten season? It is a typical no, right? No, there is no constitutional backing to say you cannot conduct elections during Ramadan or the Lenten season. Typically, no. And in fact, I understand that the Ramadan might start tomorrow or next. It's anticipated. Let's not forget that the FCT election that will be conducted will happen on the 21st of this month. Where are the agitations? In fact, it wasn't heard of till the national elections. There is something fishy. And then you now look at Muslim-dominated majority countries like Turkey. Turkey conducted its national elections in 2024 on the 31st of March. That was during the Ramadan period. Indonesia has done the same. Bangladesh has done the same. Pakistan has done the same, to show you that, globally too, this kind of considerations, might not be put into consideration in some countries. So it is a moral stand, not a legal stand. Now let us look at the implication. What is the implication? Coming from the Muslim community, you can, and of course the Christian community too, because they too also fast, right, during the Lenten period. You will understand that fasting takes a toll on the body and on the soul. You're weak, you're tired, and all of that, and it's a time for spiritual dedication. So you will think that, okay, fine, we need to give people time to dedicate themselves to the God that they serve, and not bring physical activities that will disrupt the process. That is a very valid argument. However, there is a broader implication that I think is a bit dangerous. One is the fact that this logic did not start with voting. It began long before voting. One, it has started even along with education. There are states in Nigeria where when there is Ramadan, students don't go to school. And these are states with more out-of-school children than even other parts of the country, right? So you can see that we are extending a logic from schools to elections, and my fear is, where and how are we going to extend this logic to? We might extend this logic to a mischievous and dangerous dimension, even though it is a genuine agitation by some people. Then let's look at another implication. The other implication is that beyond Islam, there's also the Christian faith. So, for example, if democracy makes consideration for the Islamic faith, it also has to make consideration for the Christian faith. And it also has to make consideration for the traditional religion for it to be fair. There are Christian religions, for example, that will say their worship days is on Saturdays, the Sabbath people. And they don't vote because that is that day. So what are the considerations we have made for them? What if the traditional religion comes to say, okay, fine, we also have our sacred days that now disrupts the calendar? What kind of consideration are we going to make for them? So if you put all of these considerations together, it becomes a very, very complex and problematic issue. The third one I think that I will highlight before I stop and then you can come in is the fact that this country is battling with Islamic extremism, the Boko Haram and all of those people. What are their main views? That Islam is not worshipped and practiced the right way, whether correctly or wrongly. That is what they hold. And they are saying Islam is not propagated in the scheme of things. Westernization has taken over Nigeria and all of that. That is their main argument. So once we begin to push on this kind of arguments and make this a national debate, what will happen? If, for example, the calendar does not change, right? It gets to the election period. Do you know that these terrorist groups can propagate this, attack people that go to vote to say, I told you that the Nigerian government does not respect Islam. So they are holding elections during Ramadan period. So anybody that goes out to vote during Ramadan period is not a true Muslim.
But Mr. Angalapu, looking at this particular situation, we can understand that aside from it going to it being Ramadan, it is the Lenten season as well. But why is it that it is always separated that, okay, the agitation is just coming from the people that are going to be conducting Ramadan or are going to be observing Ramadan, aside from the people that would have the Lenten season as well and will be observing their own faith?
So because the reality as of what we have now, the agitations that we see, are coming mostly from the Islamic faith. And even in the Islamic faith, it is coming mostly from our Muslim brothers from the northern part of Nigeria. Mostly from the southwest and the southern part of Nigeria. I think they do not have much of a problem about it. And even, in fact, when you even look at the space, if you do a network analysis of this agitation, you will realize that it is pushed by a few influential individuals in society and clerics. So that's why I had said, if it was a fundamental problem to an ordinary Muslim, our Muslim brothers and sisters, of course, which are very, very important to the Nigerian state. If it was an ordinary, if it was a movement by the ordinary Muslims, it would have begun from, for example, the FCT elections. Of course, we have a lot of Muslims in the FCT. They would have said, well, we have to first move the FCT elections, or even conduct the FCT elections before the Ramadan starts. But somebody and you have to also understand how people shape narrative in this country. Somebody brings it up, shapes it up, and is now making it a majority issue. And what will happen is that this issue can be weaponized, and then, of course, the street and people, ordinary people, buys into it, and it becomes a very big issue.
All right. Now, the elections are scheduled, almost 3 months before the May 29 handover. And, INEC says that, that gap allows them to collate the results and also, give room for those that want to head to court at the end of the day if there are issues with this result. Now, what I want to know is, should an election calendar really be built around expected litigation? Because I remembered in 2023, we saw, a lot of court cases after the elections. So is it that, while INEC is, scheduling and, considering other things as well, that should also be put in place?
Yes, of course. There is no election in Nigeria that has not had litigation. So, of course, you must necessarily, put that into consideration because there is a window for people to complain. And complaint is also part of democracy. So my idea is that it is not as though consideration shouldn't be made, whether with respect to legality or with respect to religion. The idea is that there should be more consultation. We have now realized that this is an issue. You cannot even say, for example, that you want to, for example, say the Muslim population is not important. They are also a very important population in the scheme of things of Nigeria. And if they decide to say they are not coming out to vote because of Ramadan, it's very problematic because, of course, the voter turnout in Nigeria has been reducing over time. We don't want that to happen. So there has to be considerations, but consideration that ensures that the litigation process is covered, consideration that ensures that the calendar for, handover is adhered to 150 days to 30 days to the expiration of the office is also adhered to. It's very, very, very important.
All right, now, we've seen that the National Assembly has cut short its recess to discuss election scheduling. Now, with this, what does this say about the political weight of this timeline, and how do you think that the deliberations will come through?
Well, I think it's very important that, this shows that Nigeria is very, though in principle is a secular state, really, because it doesn't really have a state religion. But it also shows that we are very religious people, and religion plays a whole lot in the politics of Nigeria. And they also know, all of the House of Assembly members know that, National Assembly members rather know that, religion plays a lot of role in bringing them to power again. So, for example, I'm guessing that people that subscribe to this view will be waiting for those that will vote or speak against or not speak against this issue to say, well, you either supported our faith, whether Christianity or Islam, or you did not support it. So it's very, very important that all of these dynamics are happening. It is also very surprising that the kind of urgency that they did not place on the Electoral Act, they are also placing on religion, because religion is a rallying point. So we can see the importance of religion in the polity of Nigeria. But what I want to state emphatically is that, in my honest opinion, I don't think that many ordinary Muslims or Christians care whether or not elections are held during the Ramadan or Lenten period. In any case, it's a period of spiritual dedication where Nigerians should be more honest, right? If it's a time where we are going to be more honest and we are having issues in our election period, probably that is the way to solve vote buying in Nigeria.
It will curb all of that, probably.
So you're not expected to take bribe. I am not also expected to give bribes. So I mean, that is the best time to show dedication to God. So let us show dedication to God with our election. That is my view. But that is not to say those saying that, we cannot vote because of this reason do not have, a right to say so.
Also, okay, with all of this, INEC has said, okay, they would, consult stakeholders. They would also see the possible ways in which these issues can be resolved, and also bringing in the lawmakers as well. And this brings me to my next question. Now, if, INEC says any change would require coming from the lawmakers, really, does it not make the election calendar political even before, the campaigns and what have you?
Well, election in Nigeria has always been very political, really. It has really been very political. After all, the INEC chair itself was appointed by the presidency, so it's already very, very political. But the whole idea is that, was it a politics of consensus, or was it a politics that divided us? If it's a politics that makes all of us, agree and then come out to vote, I mean, there are lots of consensus. Democracy is about consensus building. So if the agreement is something that makes every segment happy and not bring agitations, I think it's good. But the whole idea is that it must come from consensus building. It must come from consultations. Now that we have started consulting religious leaders, let us not also forget. Oftentimes, if we forget to consult the traditional religion in Nigeria, so let us also consult them and ensure that we all are treated fairly and put into the scheme of things within the election calendar.
But, sorry, excuse me, Howard, but don't you think that when, these politicians or these lawmakers would be the one to decide on a new date for elections, don't you think citizens will look at it like, oh, there's a strategy somewhere coming up to, either inflate this vote or, do the wrongdoings that they need to do, being that the new dates are going to fall in the holy month in totality, because we have Ramadan and also we have, the Lenten period for Christians?
Well, I think this is why religion and weaponization of religion is dangerous. We've created an opening, and nobody makes law against himself. It's an opening. And to be fair to Nigerians, these politicians do not really care about the holiness of Ramadan in quotes, right? They do not care. So, but they have seen an opening to restructure the calendar in their favor, and we gave them that opening. So it is now difficult to say, we are doing this for you, and then you are complaining. So we created that opening. In my opinion, let us, have a common front. We can, let us think, in my opinion, really, INEC should consult with all of the clerics, all of the Muslim associations, Christian associations, and all the traditional religion people, and all of that to come up with something that works. But when we allow the beneficiaries of the election, which of course are the people that want to contest the election in 2027, dictate the dates, it becomes very, very problematic. They might set the date in a way that, the election results are out. Maybe you have less than 3 days to put a legal team together to complain. And they say, well, you're out of the election window. Well, but we brought this upon ourselves because we've actually elevated religion above our civic responsibility.
All right, now speaking of a date adjustment, in your view, does INEC have enough flexibility to adjust these dates, or would any significant change require legislative intervention? And if there's any room for adjustment, do you think that it would be pushed up, or the time would be extended towards probably the end of March to do the elections?
Yeah, I think that they have some window of flexibility, looking at 150 days to 30 days. They have some window of flexibility. But it's also something that is very, very tough, because the election has a lot of logistics activities, and it is a very, very tough decision. We don't even know yet, for example, whether or not close to the elections, with all of the security issues that we have, like the way we shifted it to 15 elections or so, due to security and all of that. We don't even know if something else will happen that will make the elections shift. And if we go past that 30 days, it becomes very, very problematic, and we'll now start talking about there's now a gap in the Constitution. So we have to be very, very careful how we push this. It's a very, very, it looks very simplistic, but it's a very, very delicate thing that is coming.
Okay, so concerning logistics and preparedness for INEC, they argue that the fixed dates would help nationwide logistics and also recruitment, training, deployment of, their personnel to different communities and localities. But do you think that, administrative issues should come back before voter convenience? I mean, looking at the issues that we have on ground, do you think that administrative convenience, I was looking for the right word, administrative convenience comes before voter convenience?
I think the both goes together and they reinforce each other. So for example, adequate planning will also lead to voter convenience, right? And then also inadequate planning can also inconvenience the voters. I think it goes together. What I want to see, and what's very important for an organization like ours, is to see that this window that has been opened gives INEC enough time to prepare, that we don't hear all of the recurrent logistic challenges that we've been hearing over and over again. Because administrative, preparedness is very, very important. You have to, register the new voters. You have to print the voters card and all of that, and also clean up the voter register if necessary and all that. So all of this, it's very, very important. So I think it's very, very important that we have this window. Let's not even forget that the Electoral Act is being reconsidered. So if, for example, it is passed before the election, just like it was passed late 2022 before 2023 elections, it might bring a lot of provisions that will make INEC to do a lot of more things, right? So this window gives them quite a lot of time. But of course, it is not this is not to say that because they have this long window they will prepare well, right? But at least it gives us some kind of hope that probably it might help them prepare well. Let's not forget, we are coming from a fractured election in 2023, and INEC also needs this particular period to do a lot of voter education to build trust in Nigerians. So this window is very good, but then it is not also to say we cannot make consensus or we cannot make some level of deliberations around some of the issues that are being raised around the elections at this moment.
Now, with all of these debates of back and forth when it comes to Ramadan and the timelines and all of that, how do you think it affects political participation and voter engagement across the country in the times coming? Yeah,
so, it really affects. So, you definitely understand Nigeria very well. Nigeria is a very religious country, and it's very easy to weaponize religion. So for the fact that we even have this issue, we've made it a national debate already. It's already it's a big problem. Now, INEC is in a very delicate situation. In fact, it is better for it now to shift the elections than to hold it in this particular date, right? Because what is going to happen is that some political parties that possibly have not released statements to say, please shift the Ramadan or shift the election timetable or for Lenten season or Ramadan and all of that, will be seen as, oh, you don't like our religion. You don't like the fact that we are Christians, you don't like the fact that we are Muslims, and you don't like the fact that, we need to worship our God and dedicate ourselves to our God. It's a problem. So once you go to mobilize people for election, for voting, you may be surprised that they'll say, oh, this person that does not like our religion is here to tell us to vote. When you could not make consensus for us. It's a very, very big challenge. So already now, we've made it a national debate. So the best we can do is to now have some level of consensus. Shift it backward, shift it forward, but ensure that we also meet our constitutional demands. Because going back to, and again, like I had said, this was not in a public domain. People have shaped this narrative. And unfortunately, when you shape a narrative and throw it, it's like a fire. You lit a fire. It's difficult for you to now stop it. So this narrative now, you've thrown it to the public. People that did not even think of this thing are now picking it, right? So if it doesn't change, it now becomes a fundamental problem.
But then do you think it is something that would soon die down, or it is going to be continuous with the weight of, the perspective due to its religious content, I would say?
It depends on how it is weaponized and whipped up. So for example, it can be weaponized in a manner that, all Christians that are there to the Lenten season all Muslims that are there to the Ramadan season don't come out to vote. Anyone that comes out to vote on election day is an enemy of the Islamic faith or an enemy of the Christian faith, because we are supposed to be fasting. And let's just say some persons think that it is a civic responsibility to come out to vote. It can lead to a situation where there will be an intra, religious conflict, where people begin to attack one another for that specific reason. So I think that basically the whole idea is that, we need to ensure that there is consensus building. We need to ensure that, every group is carried along, because it's a very, very delicate issue.
All right, thank you very much, Dengiyefa Angalapu. I always like your name. Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you
so much for highlighting what is going on with our election timelines here in Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.